My family swore I was a Navy dropout. I stood silent at my brother's seal ceremony. Then his general locked eyes with me and said, "Colonel, you're here." The crowd froze. My father's jaw hit the floor. My brother didn't even salute. He just whispered, "You lied to all of us." Hey Reddit. My name is Jason Keller. I'm 34 years old, and for the past decade I've been a ghost to my own family. At least in the way they chose to see me. They think I dropped out of the Navy, failed my training, and disappeared in shame. That's the version they were comfortable believing. What they never knew, what I never told them, is that I was never allowed to explain, and when the truth came out, it shattered every smug assumption they had built about me. To understand what happened, you need to know what kind of family I come from. My father, Douglas Keller, is a third-generation Navy man. He served his 20 years, rose to lieutenant commander, and expected both of his sons to follow in his footsteps. No exceptions. My younger brother Drew was his golden child. Always did things by the book. Always the apple of Dad's eye. When I joined the Navy at 18, I was met not with encouragement but pressure. Pressure to outperform, to be better than Dad ever was, to carry on the Keller legacy and go beyond it. And for a while I did. I was good. Damn good. I graduated top of my class in OCS and later received orders for a classified path that had me pulled into a different trajectory entirely. I didn't flunk out of the Navy. I vanished into the black. I became something else. Something the family would never understand because the work I did didn't exist on paper. I was recruited into a covert Navy intelligence unit and later worked with SEAL teams across the globe. By 30 I had multiple deployments under my belt, a chest full of ribbons I couldn't wear in public, and a promotion that stunned even my most hardened commanding officer, Colonel Jason Keller, a rank rarely achieved at my age. But my silence came with a cost. I couldn't tell my family anything. Not one word. Operational security confidentiality and a deep betrayal from someone close meant my file was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. So when my leave came through and I tried to visit home, I was met with doors that didn't open. Dad told me I was a disgrace. Drew laughed in my face and said he always knew I'd crack under pressure. Mom. Well, Mom just cried and asked me why I couldn't have just finished like Drew. I didn't respond. I turned around and walked away from all of it. For years I worked in the shadows. In and out of theaters of conflict, sometimes in uniform, sometimes not. I saved lives. I gave orders that ended others. But all the while there was this simmering ache inside me. Not for approval but for clarity. For my family to see what I had become. Not for validation, just truth. That chance came unexpectedly. Drew had finally made it. He was graduating from Bud/S and being pinned as a Navy SEAL. The golden son fulfilling the dream. He invited the entire family, and for some reason I got a forwarded message from a cousin. I wasn't really supposed to be there, but I decided I would go. Not in uniform, not with pomp, just to sit in the back to see the culmination of his journey. Maybe even in silence, to be proud. I showed up in a simple dress shirt and slacks, cap pulled low. Nobody noticed me as the families gathered under the California sun. Near the stage set up on the base, my father was sitting front row beaming. My mother clutched her pearls like her baby was getting married. Drew looked proud, confident, and unshakably smug. The ceremony began. Officers spoke of honor, duty, sacrifice. I listened quietly, nodding to each word. And then it happened. One of the high-ranking generals, a man I hadn't seen in almost 2 years, took the stage. He was part of the leadership during my last overseas operation. We'd shared firefights, grief, and bourbon in cold deserts halfway across the world. I hadn't expected him to be there. As he scanned the crowd, his gaze landed on me. His voice caught for half a second, not in hesitation but recognition. He squinted, stepped slightly forward, and then without a microphone he said it. "Colonel, you're here." It wasn't loud, but it was loud enough. Every eye snapped toward me. I didn't move. I just looked back at him and gave the smallest nod. The general chuckled, shook his head slightly, and continued his speech. But the moment had already shattered the silence. My father's face drained of color. My mother clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Drew stared at me like he'd seen a ghost, and then in a voice barely audible he mouthed the words, "You lie to all of us." The ceremony finished in a blur, but the room felt 10 degrees colder. When it ended, I quietly stepped away. I didn't need applause. I didn't need to explain, but they followed. My father approached first. "You're a colonel. He asked, voice low, hoarse. I nodded. But you left the Navy. We heard you heard what you wanted to believe. I cut him off. You never asked. You never gave me a chance. His mouth opened and closed like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Drew stepped forward next. Still in uniform, array under his arm. All this time, he said, shaking his head. All this time we thought you'd failed. Maybe that made it easier for you, I replied. Maybe it made you feel like the only hero in the family. I expected rage or maybe shame. Instead, he just said, why didn't you tell us? Because I was ordered not to, and because none of you were willing to listen even when I could. My mother approached last. Her eyes were red, but not from pride. I always prayed you were safe, she said. I didn't know who to believe, and yet you chose to believe the worst. She looked away. I knew those words would sting for a long time. I didn't stay for the celebration. I left the base quietly, walking back to the car I had parked off-site. No cameras. No fanfare. Just me. A man they all thought had disappeared in shame. Revealed instead as someone they never truly knew. But the thing is, that wasn't the end of it. Because 1 week later something else happened. Something that took the betrayal to another level entirely. And this time I wasn't going to stay silent. The drive back to my childhood home felt heavier than any deployment I'd ever been on. Not because I was afraid, but because this was a different kind of battlefield. One where truth, pride, and betrayal fought for space in the same room. After the chaos of Drew's seal ceremony and the stunned silence my presence had left behind, I figured that would be the end of it. But then came the letter. It was handwritten. No return address. Just a crisp ivory envelope with my name scrawled in my father's harsh all-caps handwriting. Come home. We need to talk. Dad. No apology. No warmth. Just a demand. Typical. I don't know why I went. Maybe a part of me still held on to the illusion that somehow, some way they could redeem themselves. That my father, the man who had once made me run laps in the snow for being too soft, had finally realized what he'd done. But deep down I knew this wasn't about closure. It was about control. Still I drove. Their house looked like it had been frozen in time. Same chipped white paint, same sagging porch swing, same cracked front steps where I used to sit after sneaking out of the house as a teenager. I took a breath, adjusted my collar, and knocked. My mother opened the door. Her eyes were puffy like she'd been crying for days, but she didn't say anything. Just stepped aside and let me in. The living room was full. Dad, Drew, Aunt Meredith, cousin Tommy, the same one who spread the rumor that I washed out of basic. Even Uncle Carl, who once told me I was a disgrace to the uniform. All sitting silently in a semicircle as if this were some kind of intervention. I had half a mind to walk out then and there. Jason, Dad began. His voice a strange mix of gravel and guilt. I know you didn't expect this, but we figured it was time. Time for what? I asked coldly. To make things right, he said. I looked around the room. Every single one of them had played a part in tearing down my name. And now they wanted to fix it in a single evening. You had 10 years, I replied. 10 years to pick up a phone, to write a letter, to ask me what really happened. Instead, you decided the worst version of me was the easiest to believe. Dad stood, not with the military posture he used to carry like a badge of honor, but stiff, nervous. We didn't know, Jason. We heard things, saw things. When you disappeared, the Navy wouldn't tell us anything. Then Drew started getting noticed, and well, we just assumed you couldn't handle it. Assumed I failed, you mean? He nodded, ashamed. And now, I asked, folding my arms. Now that a general called me colonel in front of a crowd, now you suddenly care? It wasn't just that Drew cut in. He looked different, less smug than usual, more conflicted. After the ceremony, General McRae pulled me aside, told me the truth about what you've done, who you really are, the missions, the commendations, all of it. So that's what this is about, I said. Damage control. No. My mother said, stepping forward. This is about us realizing that we were wrong. That you were out there protecting this country while we sat here playing judge and jury. I laughed. A hollow sound in a house that had never heard my truth. It's convenient, isn't it? To rewrite the story once you find out I wasn't a dropout, but something more than you could ever imagine. But where were all of you when I was eating alone in diners during Christmas? Where were you when I buried teammates? When I came home to no letters, no calls? Nothing. They had no answer. I turned to leave. Wait, Dad said quickly. That's not all. He reached behind the old desk and pulled out a thick manila folder. My name was printed on the tab in bold. Colonel Jason Keller, Classified Clearance Review. What is that? I asked, suspicion rising. Your reactivation packet, Drew said. There's a joint command forming Task Force Echo. They want you to lead. I was tapped for the team. They want us both. I stared at them speechless. You want me to command a task force with Drew after everything? General McRae said it has to be you, Dad added. He said there's no one else with your experience, your mind, your history. He called you the most brilliant covert operator he's ever met. And you? I asked, eyes narrowing. You just want the Keller name to finally mean something again as long as it's under your terms. That stung. I could see it in his face, but it was true. For a moment I was tempted. The mission sounded real. The kind of high stakes, deep ops work I hadn't tasted in years. And there was a part of me that missed it. Missed the field, the tension, the edge, but not like this. No. I said flatly. Jason, please. Drew said. We can do it together. Clean slate. You got your ceremony, I said. You got your cheers and your medals. You got to bask in the spotlight with your parents clapping like seals in the front row. I earned everything in the dark, and I don't need your pity, your partnership, or your project. Then why did you come? My mother whispered, to see if there was anything left in this house worth forgiving. And I turned to the door. There's not. I left them standing there stunned. They called after me, but I didn't look back. I drove straight to base, heart pounding, head clear. I called my CO the next day. If Task Force Echo's real, I said, I'll lead. But I choose my own team. I don't work with ghosts. Understood, he said. We want Jason Keller, not the family name. 2 weeks later I deployed. 6 months deep cover in South Asia. 2 operatives rescued. 1 high-value target extracted. 0 mistakes. The task force became legend. And me, I became the whisper in every briefing room. The men who walked away from the noise and owned the silence. As for my family, I never returned another call. They had their truth now. Let them sit with it. And somewhere I hope Drew understood the burden of being forgotten doesn't disappear just because the truth finally surfaces. Because real soldiers know some wounds don't need medals. They need distance.